Hello and welcome to another installment of Impressive Opinions. I'm Bennett, this is Sinjun, and today we'll be talking about The Big Short, starring Ryan Gosling, Christian Bale, Brad Pitt, Steve Carell, a number of other people as well.
And we're forgetting somebody. Steve Carell, Christian Bale, Brad Pitt, Ryan Gosling. No, I guess those are the main four
Those
guys.
are the main guys.
There's some supporting people also.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was directed by Adam McKay, who was previously known for Anchorman and Step Brothers and Anchorman 2, some other comedies.
A lot of comedy. He's only done comedies up until this point.
I didn't think he had a movie like this in him, to be honest. I never would have thought he would... I knew he had the comedy chops, and he's a funny... He knows how to direct comedy really well, because Anchorman is one of my favorite comedies of the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But being able to channel that into a really serious, thoughtful, powerful drama that is about an important contemporary issue, how he was able to, to make that relatable and understandable, but also it was still the funniest movie that I saw in 2015.
Yeah, and the issue being the collapse of the housing market. If you don't know what The Big Short's about, it's about the collapse of the housing market in the mid-2000s, 2008.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it can be a drier subject. It's
absolutely.
It's not necessarily what a stand-up comedian's going to go to, to try and make light, of the situation. There's not a whole lot there to, in terms of comedy. But what's great about this movie is the ability of Adam McKay to still have the same kind of improvisational comedic styling, but with really heavy-handed, statistics and different analysis that
he breaks it down by having little scenes like with Margot Robbie in a bubble bath.
Whenever you hear subprime, think.
And also not just that, but Ryan Gosling is a narrator, and he would turn to the camera.
I never hung out with these idiots after work ever. I had fashion friends.
He was like a Jersey Shore, almost like a Guido. Like, he was funny, sophisticated, and knowledgeable, but he was like, everything he said was so crass. And,
he really channeled his inner douchebag for this.
Yeah,
it felt like
totally.
It kind of felt like it came naturally to him sometimes.
Yeah, I think it probably did.
That's my quant.
Your what?
My quantitative. My math specialist. Look at him. You notice anything different about him? Look at his face.
That's pretty racist.
Look at his eyes. I'll give you a hint. His name's Yang.
But he was kind of the glue that held the whole movie together.
Yeah.
He was kind of like the little, real tongue-in-cheek, comedy aspect that kept coming up. They all were kind of funny in their own way. Even Christian Bale's character, it's not Batman.
And on Christian Bale, that was a really impressive performance from him. I think he deserved that Oscar nomination because it was another case where he has completely transformed himself into a character, and I didn't sense any previous performance that he's done. I've seen all his movies, and I didn't sense anything else that he's done in this. This was a totally different thing for him.
Yeah. His
mannerisms and just his manner of speaking, even the way he moves his mouth when he's talking to people was totally different, and he really embodied this guy.
Yes. Same thing with Steve Carell too. This is he's in the past few years he's been kind of burgeoning into the more dramatic roles, and I'm a big Office fan. I'm like a lot of people were, and this is not Michael Scott. You know what I mean?
No, but he was still hilarious in his own way.
Yeah, he was still funny in his own way, and it's still he was kind of a charming character, but he was definitely like a flawed character. But I found myself laughing at everybody. I mean, except Brad Pitt. I didn't find Brad Pitt to be terribly amusing, but he had a lot of...
Brad Pitt's part was more of a cameo, could have been played by anybody.
Yeah. And he was also more like his whole character, the purpose of the character was to denote the seriousness of this whole situation.
Yeah.
Everyone else was kind of, glazing over the top of it. And he was the only one that's like, hey, this is what's actually happening. People are losing jobs. People are going to lose their homes. So him
and Steve Carell. I mean, more Steve Carell was the moral, was the moral center of the film, even though they still profited off it. At the end of the day, they were all kind of scummy, deep down. But Steve Carell's character was the one to kind of echo the audience's feelings towards what's happening. And at the end of the movie, it comes down to it, and his his friend says either we take it all or we lose it all now. And so, of course, he made the decision that any human alive would take, and he said, okay, we're just going to sell, we're going to take it. So, as much as his morals meant to him at the end of the day, the money meant more, and that's kind of, indicative of American society in general.
Well, they're not taking pennies.
It's billion. Yeah, they all made
hundreds of millions of dollars.
Ryan Gosling,
not billions of dollars.
Yeah, Ryan Gosling's character, I forget the character's name, but he made the least out of all of them, which was still $50 million. And Christian Bale's character, Michael Burry, made like $1 billion, I want to say.
Yeah, he made $1 billion.
Yeah. Billion with a B. Anyway, so but it was a very insightful movie. It was able to break down the mortgage stuff and a lot of the economics involved with how we got to that point and why some people saw it coming. It was brilliant how Christian Bale's character was like, the reason I know is because I read all these things, and that kind of reveals that, oh wow, like, the reason it happened is just out of ignorance because people just assumed that things would be okay. But if you actually stop and see what's happening, actually things weren't okay. Mm-hmm. And the people in charge were lying to the American people because, as Christian Bale's character again says, we must be living in a fraudulent system. Because as they were getting closer and closer to 2008, things were not unfolding as he expected them to. And his investors that he was using their money were freaking out because of the way things were happening.
Well, he was losing $80 to $100 million.
Yeah, he was losing their money until it hit, and then he made
$1 billion.
All their money back, and then they were still pissed at him.
And then some. All the investors made a ton of money.
Anyone can see that there's a real estate bubble.
Actually, no one can see a bubble. That's what makes it a bubble.
That's dumb, Lawrence. It's always markers. Mortgage fraud, quintupled since 2000, and the average take-home pay. It's flat, but home prices are soaring. That means the homes are debt, not assets.
So Mike Burry, a guy who gets his hair cut at Supercuts and doesn't wear shoes, knows more than Alan Greenspan and Hank Paulson.
Yeah, Dr. Mike Burry. Yes, he does.
Yeah, I was surprised that Adam McKay was able to pull something like that off.
Yeah, but when I saw it, and I've seen it twice, it's still very hard, and the subject matter is so dense. But, like you had mentioned with Margot Robbie, or they also even had Anthony Bourdain. I love Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah.
Anything with Anthony Bourdain, I'll pay attention. And so he explains this whole process of, hey, if you have this brand new fish, well, then that's what it is. But a week later, it's not a brand new fish anymore. So you can't sell it like it's a brand new fish. But if you put that old fish into a new fish stew, all of a sudden it's new again, because now the fish stew is a new thing. And that's where, these bad mortgages, that was the analogy he used. Mm-hmm. I like to think that I understand the concepts that they were explaining, but I don't. I really don't. I think it goes way over my head. It was entertaining, super thoughtful, and it's something that every American should be educated on, because there even is some foreshadowing of maybe a sequel, and that's a tongue-in-cheek thing. We don't want a sequel to this movie. A sequel to this movie is that the housing market crashes all over again, and it's even more profound and lasting.
And Michael Burry has actually said, the character played by Christian Bale, he's actually said that he can foresee something coming again. And if he predicted it the first time, then, we should probably pay attention to it.
Pay attention to it.
I don't know if people really care.
Yeah.
I mean, even after everything that's happened, and, and that was a point in the film that when Ryan Gosling says, oh, yeah, all the bankers went to jail and everything was good again. Oh, just kidding.
Yeah. Nobody went to jail.
Because we didn't... Yeah, we bailed them out, and they're all probably richer now. We didn't learn anything. Yeah,
that's when I try and explain to people what the movie's about. It's almost impossible. I just say it's about the collapse of the housing market in the mid-2000s. But what is really something that you can bite onto is something that Ryan Gosling's character explains, which is that the housing market starts collapsing everywhere, but the one place it didn't change is where all the executives and CEOs for the banks lived. Mm-hmm. Where they lived, they weren't impacted. In fact, the housing market probably went up, because they weren't impacted at all. So that's, that was my takeaway, that I can completely understand and wrap my head around, unlike some of the other more, dense points that they go into.
On a purely emotional level, I understood what the movie was going for, but when it came to the nitty-gritty economic stuff, even when they broke the terms down, I still ended up getting lost. There was one conversation that Steve Carell had with, I forget the guy's name. He was an Asian guy in a diner.
Yeah.
And they had a long conversation. I understood how it ended up because it ended with Steve Carell saying, "I can't believe you can live with yourself. You're a scumbag." And I understood why he was pissed off at him.
Yeah.
But all the details that led to that, I ended up getting confused. I was like, so he's, But the important point is that the movie does get across is that basically these bankers and all these elite people are screwing over, the lower class, the American people, by making them confused, by making them feel the same way I felt during the movie a lot of times, is how they're able to screw over the American people and lie to them and get money from them. I think that was the important takeaway. That
and the movie opens with Ryan Gosling, who's the narrator, explicitly saying you're going to hear a lot of words in this movie that are meant to make you feel stupid, and you're not supposed to understand them, and that's okay.
Yeah,
like that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
you're not supposed to be on that side of the curtain. You're not supposed to understand the inner goings on of all these.
Right. But that's exactly how the people, all the people who got screwed out of their savings and loans and all that and lost their homes. The entire reason why those people got screwed, or at least part of the reason why, is because the bankers and all those people were relying on us not knowing all those things, because if we had the foresight to know what was going to happen, then people wouldn't have lost their homes, things like that.
Who would have thought that, an example from the movie, who would have thought that a stripper with 4 or 5 different mortgages on 3 different properties was going to default on all of her mortgages? Who would have, how would the banks even allow her to get the first mortgage, let alone, so that's an example of the fraudulent system,
right.
Where there was no regulations, and there really still aren't that many, regulations.
No.
They, at least if there are, these are the kind of things that average Americans aren't privy to. We don't understand these goings on. We don't know what congressmen to vote for, for regulations on the tax code and all that stuff. I mean, who cares about that? I want another sequel to Dumb and Dumber or Ride Along. You know what I mean? That's what I can understand. I get those movies. Yeah, it's so funny. When you mentioned to me that you thought it was a comedy, that's the first time that I thought of it as a comedy. But it is. It's really funny. I was laughing, at a lot of the scenes throughout the whole movie. It has definitely an air, real comedic air throughout the whole movie. But it's not funny. So it's a dark comedy for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Go see it.
Check out The Big Short. This has been another installment of Impressive Opinions. I'm Bennett. This is Sinjun. Thanks for tuning in.